You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Park Ranger Locked On Coogs from Houston and Iowa State as they get ready to tip off in a college game day type of atmosphere this week. And Iowa State number 8 team in the country. Houston is number 5. Both representing the Big 12 in the top 10. Good things all the way around, right? This weekend, however, is the most impactful weekend as far as Houston getting ready for March Madness of any weekend they've had this year. And there's a few slight differences, but functionally, you play Iowa State Saturday and Texas Tech on Monday. That's 2 games that are going to be nationally televised. That's a college game day atmosphere on Saturday, a big Monday atmosphere on Monday. You're getting the spotlight in every sense of the word on both games. But also, that quick turnaround is a lot like Sweet 16 Thursday, Elite 8 Saturday. That's a lot like round of 64 Friday, round of 32 Sunday. And for Houston, that could be a lot like Final Four Saturday, championship game Monday, right? That's how March Madness plays out. It's a series of 2 games in 3 days. And as you go further, the competition gets better. For Houston, this is 2 top 10 teams in hostile environments with the nation watching. And it's those 2 games in a span of about 72 hours. That's as close to the March Madness thing as you can realistically get in the regular season. Now, win, lose, tie, draw. And I think Houston can win both. I've also been longstanding that the team that wins the Big 12 is going to have about 3 losses. Houston's only got 1 in conference. You do the math. I something's going to happen. I just don't. As much as I think Houston can finish the season with just 1 conference loss, it just doesn't seem realistic. And I don't know what that means is going to happen the next 2 days. For all I know, they'll drop Cincy when they shouldn't or whatever, right? But this weekend, win, lose, tie, draw is going to give you a great gauge. It's going to give the staff a great gauge. It's going to get you prepared for those weekends in March. Now, in 2022, Houston makes an Elite 8 run, right? American Athletic Conference still at that time. And even with injuries and everything, they got to the Elite 8 and they seem to run out of steam. Just run out of gas, really, at the end of that Elite 8 game against Villanova. And we look at that season, that Houston Cougar team, went back and looked at the schedule, make sure I wasn't wrong on this, didn't really have any weekend like this on the schedule. Part of that was because they're American Athletic Conference, so you never had 2 games of that. You rarely had, I should say, 2 games of even top 100 in KenPom, let alone games like this caliber in a 72-hour span. Right, in their non-conference earlier part of the season, I should say, they did play Wisconsin and Oregon on back-to-back games. The tournament was in Las Vegas that year because of the fall of 2021 and traveling was weird or whatever. Both were top 100 in KenPom. It was back-to-back days. It feels similar, both Power 4 schools or whatever. But Wisconsin was not themselves that year. Oregon was not a contender or anything like that, like Tech and Iowa State both are. Only other instances of that season you can argue they had other top 100 KenPom games where you saw SMU on a Wednesday and Memphis on a Saturday, and that's further apart. They later saw Wichita State, Tulane, and SMU spread out across an 8-day window, but that's not really the same. That's also kind of, again, further back in the top 100 of KenPom that season. Great year for the program, but you got to wonder, had they had things preparing them earlier in the season for Final Four Saturday, National Championship Monday, Sweet 16 Friday, Elite 8 Sunday, whatever the case may be, would they have been more prepared? Would they have just had a better understanding of how to go about that weekend as a team? The coaching staff does. They've been to the Final Four. And then for further back, Kelvin's coached another Final Four, and some of you guys played for him in that one, right? But it's different when you've lived it. When you've lived it as a team program, present tense, going through that kind of a weekend, those kind of 3 days. Obvious difference between this weekend and March Madness. Get the first one at home, right? You're playing in front of your home crowd for Fertitta Center. Houston rarely loses the Fertitta Center. Knock on wood. I don't want it to happen this weekend either, but it's a rarity, right? I mentioned that Iowa State's not great on the road either. On top of having Milan out for several games, they've lost several road games this season. So that makes it a little bit different. And then the inverse is that Monday's game is in Lubbock, and they're pissed, right? JT Toppin got tossed in the first game. Grant McCaslin got tossed in the first game. And so even though they beat you earlier this season, they feel like they still have some revenge to pay, right? So that's an interesting atmosphere that we're going to break down before Monday. That is a different thing. The other difference in this is that you've played Tech once before. It doesn't happen very often. You see a team you've played before already in March Madness. I say that after it just happened to Houston last year, but it's not a very common thing, right? And so the level of opponent twice in 72 hours is kind of where this comparison may halt. And I understand if someone may think I'm crazy for thinking this, but I think this is the kind of thing that makes playing in the Big 12 so important for that elevation of Houston to that next level of program. Houston made it to a Final Four from the American Athletic Conference. It showed it can be done, right? They made it to the Elite Eight from the American Athletic Conference. They got five-star recruit Jairus Walker from the American Athletic Conference. They got Marcus Sasser in the league, Quentin Grimes in the league, Jamal Shead in the league. I guess Jamal Shead played a year in the Big 12, but you feel me? They Jairus, they did these things, right? But also, right, as far as getting over the final hurdle goes, the 72 hours this weekend between Iowa State on Saturday and Texas Tech on Monday are as close as a preparation as you can really get. I mean, even in any other metric, you look at the AP right now, Texas Tech is 9th, right? Houston is 5th. Iowa State is 8th. Alabama did lose already once this week, and they lost to Auburn last week. And all three Big 12 teams could be moving up, right? It's not a crazy world out there where that could not happen. And this could ultimately be three teams that are all playing for Final Four position. Seriously, in the same conference. And so the way that this has played out for Houston, I would have thought it'd been different weekends. Preseason, Baylor and Kansas were ranked really high, et cetera. We knew Iowa State's going to be good. That's never been a doubt thing, right? But this is shaping up for practice in the second half of February for what could set up for a very special March, especially given that the whole Final Four thing's in San Antonio, right? And so I say it to say there's a lot of interesting things to follow this weekend, and win, lose, tie, or draw, we could very well be looking back at this 72-ish hour window as super, super important come late March or even potentially early April. Now, if you think I'm crazy, think I'm lost my rocker or whatever, you can find me on all social media at Painsworth512. On Instagram, I'm at Painsworth Sports. Thank you all for tuning in today and listening to Locked on Cougars, your first listen of the day. We'll be live post-game for a little bit of a post-game reaction. Link to the show varies. We'll see how those kind of things go. And then obviously on Monday, we're breaking down things getting ready for Texas Tech Monday night. Still working some time to get on with Chris Level or Casey, I think the guys over at Locked on Texas Tech, but more on that one later. Let's get this one down first. Again, I'm thinking Houston like 62-60. We'll see how things shake out. Again, Locked on Cougars is a proud member of the Locked on Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.